Most Jeep owners invest in suspension and tires first, but if you actually take your Jeep off-road, the first thing you invest in shouldn't be tires. It should be recovery, because bigger tires may get you further down the trail, but recovery might be what gets you home. In this video, I'm going to show you the correct order to build your Jeep for off-road use. Why tire size is still ultimately what you're going to make your plans around, but why recovery is one of the most important mods to make right from the beginning if you're going to be taking your Jeep off-road. Because most people build for capability first and really only think about recovery after something goes wrong. Now, if you don't ever take your Jeep off-road, this video might not apply to you. But if you do go off-road, even occasionally, and especially if you travel alone, this is going to be absolutely critical because the trail does not care what upgrades you planned. It only cares whether you're prepared or not. Hi, I'm Ben and this is Path to Rome. Here I replace guesswork with understanding so that you can build your Jeep with confidence and maybe even save some money along the way. Tire size is still the beacon of your build. That's where the planning starts. But recovery is what protects you as you build towards that point. Planning and preparation are not the same thing, and both actually matter if you're going to take your Jeep off-road. There's a difference between planning and preparing your Jeep. For me, planning always starts with tire size, because tire size influences everything. Clearance, suspension needed, performance, braking performance, gearing, all these different things. It really sets that direction, tells you where your build's going to go long term, and keeps you from buying things twice. So yes, tire size is the first thing to think about when you're planning your Jeep build. But planning doesn't help you when you're stuck. Preparation does. And look, if you off-road long enough, eventually you're going to lose traction, whether it's loose rocks, snow, mud, whatever it might be. But that terrain's going to change, and so are the conditions. And when that happens, your lift kit doesn't really help you out. Your tires, your wheels, maybe. Just depends on where you are and what you're doing. But it's a lot easier to get stuck than you think. So, lift, tires might not get you out, but your preparation for recovery will. And at minimum, that means solid recovery points on your Jeep. And probably a quality strap, some gloves, a D-ring, solid or soft, everyone has their preferences. Soft might be a little safer. Metal ones are pretty proven too though. You're gonna have a winch, always have a tree hugger. And a snatch block could get you out of tough situations. Especially if you have a steel line, you definitely want to make sure you put a damper or a shirt or something on your line when you're pulling. And look, you don't need to go crazy with a $1,000 bag of recovery gear with every different type of rope and shackle you can imagine. You just need some good foundations. Because recovery, it's not about drama, it's about the margins. And that margin is what allows you to make mistakes and not pay for them. Now let's talk about winches. In most cases, if you're traveling with a group, a good strap and another vehicle are going to be enough to get you out of trouble. But once you start traveling alone, that responsibility to recover yourself becomes all your own. And having a good winch can go a long ways. Because that strap we just talked about requires another vehicle. A winch does not. And that changes everything, because when you're out there alone, you don't have a backup plan. And at that point, it comes down to your preparation. Now I run a Warren winch. Not sponsored, it's just something I've used for a long time and found to always be reliable, and in most circles you'll see the same thing. That doesn't mean that other brands aren't good or aren't just as capable, but this is the route that I've chosen to go. But brands are not why I'm talking to you today. I want you to understand the importance of having a recovery system and how it impacts you when you're on the trail. The mounting matters, the wiring matters, the battery matters, everything matters when you have a recovery system. And it's something you have to keep an eye on. A winch isn't something you bolt on and forget. It's something that you have to rely on when things aren't cooperating. And this is also why I'm very intentional about the gear that I have, which is why I trust Disciple Off-Road. They're an off-road shop that actually understands how things work in the real world. They don't just throw thousands of dollars of parts at something for no reason. If you're in the market for any recovery gear, or anything for that matter to help build your Jeep, check them out in the link below. Give Jeremy a call. He'll do a great job walking you through whatever it is that you need to really help you out in the real world. Because when you rely on equipment, quality and the proper design matter. Now let's clean something up, because this gets misunderstood all the time. Big tires do not automatically mean you need to replace everything on your Jeep. And in most cases, you don't need to replace much. What big tires do is they increase stress. They add leverage, they add rotational weight, they reduce your braking margins, and they accelerate wear of factory components. But what this doesn't mean is that parts are going to immediately fail. It means you need to monitor your Jeep more closely. You need to pay better attention to things. You need to understand what's normal and what's changing. And that part of the building responsibility becomes absolutely critical. If you increase tire size on your Jeep before considering recovery, you've increased the stress load on your Jeep, but you haven't considered your safety net. You've made the Jeep more capable, but you haven't made yourself more prepared. Recovery is going to protect you when you learn those limits, while those other components are just naturally wearing over time. And it protects you while you build towards your long-term plan. This exact concept is why I created the Jeep Cost Control Playbook. Because most people don't waste money on their Jeep builds with what they buy, they waste it on when they buy. They replace parts before they actually need replacement. The playbook shows you what to monitor, what to pay attention to, and how to make upgrade decisions based on real-world wear, not just general assumptions or bad advice on the internet. Look, I don't want you to throw away perfectly good factory components if you don't need to. If you want it, it's free. You can access it through the link in my description or my profile, and it'll help you build your Jeep intentionally instead of reacting to it. Let's talk about what building backwards actually looks like. You put the big tires on, your confidence goes up, the Jeep looks more capable. It actually is more capable, but that capability without preparation removes that margin. So when you go out and test those limits off-road, the consequences are higher. Not because the tires were wrong, but because preparation didn't match capability. And recovery is what keeps that capability safe. And look, after recovery, armor is probably your next logical step. Things like rock rails, skid plates, but ultimately protection for the things that keep your vehicle moving. Because when you're learning your Jeep and you're learning the terrain, armor like this ultimately is what keeps small mistakes from becoming big ones. Recovery is what's going to get you out and get you home, but the armor is what's going to give you the protection and hopefully keep you from breaking things. And both of them ultimately protect the big investment that you made when you bought your Jeep. All right, so this is how it's gonna go down. First, you need to figure out how you wanna use your Jeep. Second, start thinking about what tire size you ultimately wanna end up with, as that's gonna be the beacon for your build. Next, if you're going to take your Jeep off-road, you really should invest in recovery before you go out and test everything out and see what you actually need. Then figure out if armor is something that you actually need to protect your Jeep, and monitor your Jeep over time to see how things are changing and to see what's wearing out. And look, make sure you upgrade out of necessity, not fear, not assumption, but based on real-world understanding. Remember, plan for tires, prepare for recovery. That is the difference between building for appearance and building for longevity. And let's be real, if you actually use your Jeep off-road, recovery is not optional. It's something you really need to critically think about. It's foundational, and it's the smartest real investment that you can make to help protect everything thereafter. If this video helped you out, do me a favor, check out this one. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one.